What's going on, collectibles friends? Back again, another day. We're a few days behind, I think, but another Collectibles Dad video. Some big news in the comic book grading space. CCG, who owns CGC, all the acronyms, bought JSA, James Spence Authentication. The one item that I've got that's JSA authenticated that is my favorite is right behind me here. It is a sketch, an original sketch that was done, Life in Hell. Essentially, these characters were the inspiration behind Itchy and Scratchy. The Life in Hell sketch is what got the attention of Fox executives, which led to Matt Groening becoming The Simpsons and creating The Simpsons, the world-famous franchise. It's signed by Matt Groening, 1990 dated, and then it's got a little original art thing there. So I was excited to pick that up here over the last couple of months. But you might be wondering, what does this mean for comic collectors? Does it mean anything? Yawn. What's the deal here? All right, so as comic book collectors know, CGC historically, yes, they've got their yellow label signature series, but it has to be in person, witnessed by a CGC representative. They don't take the, hey, you mail it in, and then they'll take a look at it, and then they'll throw authentication on there and go ahead and give you a yellow label. That's not how CGC does things. And I actually really like this. I like the fact that CGC really operates with the witness, the eyewitness, because autographs in the collectible space, I think it's the most complex part of the space. And I know people are like, oh, it's just an autograph. There's so many different shenanigans that can happen with autographs. And the other part is there are excellent, over time, excellent forgers of autographs. I mean, people that are handwriting experts have tried this out, done little experiments to see if they can do this. There's also fraudsters that have done this and gotten really, going back to the 80s and 90s, there was Operation Bullpen, where there was a guy that had Mickey Mantle's autograph down pat. There was tons of sports memorabilia that was seized by the FBI because of fake autographs. And it's been something over the decades. It's a very, very tough market. And so we have great companies that do this. Of course, there's going to be stuff that slips through the cracks. They will make mistakes. We do have great companies that do it. JSA being one of them, a longtime company, James Spence Authentication. And so CGC, obviously, I think what they thought here is a lot of the business that CBCS, Beckett gets on the grading side for comic books is, yes, some of the grading, but a lot of it is the fact that they offer that authentication for the non-witness stuff. You know, so if you have an autograph, a Stan Lee autograph that you got randomly in a parking lot somewhere, you ran into him and you were able to get his autograph, you could send that into Beckett. They'll match it up and say like, yep, looks good. And they will go ahead and authenticate that autograph, and that you can do that for a variety of different collectibles. Well, CGC has really missed out on that business. That's really why a lot of people go to CBCS, is for that service. Now you can make the argument that, hey, CGC is saying we can do all that. CGC Comics can do all of that in-house for you. I was looking at some of the FAQ stuff that they had released. Well, first off, so on the sports card side, we had grading companies coming together here recently. It was a big, big deal where collectors, who owns PSA, also bought SGC. They have stated they're going to operate as independent companies. In this case, it's actually a little bit different, where ECG, CGC, and JSA are going to operate independently, it says here, for a few weeks, and then they're going to work on integration. The one thing I want to know, and the thing that I really hope they differentiate, I assume that they will, because it would be crazy if they did not, is differentiating between the eyewitness, that yellow label. Maybe it's still a yellow label, but it's got to be something, it's got to be a little bit different. The eyewitness autographs, we need to be able to tell the difference between the eyewitness stuff and the JSA CGC stuff, which it looks to me, and again, I don't know what the label is going to look like, but it looks to me like these are going to be integrated kind of in the same. So they're keeping JSA. It's not as if it's just all going to be CGC graded. They're going to keep that JSA name there. So I believe it'll be a separate label, or a marking anyway, that shows you, okay, this is a aftermarket. This is something that JSA helped authenticate. This was not an eyewitness autograph. This was sent into them to then authenticate. JSA folks helped do that. JSA got the bag. Man, they've done a good job for a long time. They've built a great reputation, and the big company came in and swooped up JSA, and it just shows you more consolidation in the sports card hobby industry landscape. A lot of the big companies swallowing up some of those good brand names, some of those longtime companies. And it's interesting because we've seen this ever since kind of the pandemic boom. A lot of these companies that were doing good work but really saw a surge in interest and just overall business, those larger companies have come in and said, you know what? We want some of that action as well, whether they're going to integrate them in like what we're seeing here, or if they're going to keep them separate as they've stated with a PSA or an SGC on the trading card grading side. But this is very interesting news. So what does this mean for comic book collectors? It just means more options, which I think is great for the end collector. Now you've got two companies here, whether it be CBCS, if you're going to go with the Beckett side, or you can go with CGC. CGC is already really that industry leader on the comic book grading side. For me personally, on the sports cards, trading cards side, we have 4 strong grading companies and then others as well that are competing for business. I would really like to see another player in the comic book grading space. CGC done a great job over the years. They've got experts there, but we've seen some chinks in the armor here over the last 6 months. They've had a couple of scandals that they've worked through. I think they settled out of one here recently, but there are certainly chinks in the armor, and not every company is going to be perfect, get it right every time. I like the idea of competition. I would really like to see another one of these large trading card companies, whether it be a collectors or something similar, whatever it's going to be, to come into the comic book grading space and try to compete to some degree. But I don't know. We will have to see. Again, I think this is a good day for comic book collectors. It's an added service. I think something needed for CGC, kind of another arrow in the quiver. Who is this bad for? It's bad for Beckett. It's bad for CBCS, who they were already trying to kind of gain momentum from some of the struggles that CGC had recently in the news. Didn't really take advantage of it, and this is going to be kind of another one where I think a lot of people are probably going to choose CGC over that CBCS for this authentication. I think that this is going to come in. CGC is going to market the heck out of this. Like we said, they're already the leader in comic book grading and authentication, and this is going to expand their offering. So let me know your thoughts here in the comments below. Is this something that you will use? Is it something that you think is a good thing? I know that there are a lot of comic books. Actually, I saw one I was just looking at. Actually, so recent pickup. I just won a comic book at Hakes Auctions here last night. My first Golden Age book, a Superman number 16. And I'm actually going to look a little harder at these Golden Age books because, man, unbelievable. And I was just looking at it, the cover's 1942. It kind of blew me away that these are books coming out during World War II. And I know, I'm not saying that I just figured that out now. I did know that, but when you really put thought into that and then kind of look at the stories, what they were writing, and just the history tied in. And I know a lot of the older Golden Age books, they do reference Nazi Germany and the war and that sort of thing. It's interesting. You talk about kind of as collectibles, as historical artifacts, and people collecting history. There's some comic books during those times, those Golden Age books that are very, very interesting and cool. So I did pick up my first book, but the point I was getting at is I was looking at another one where, and I can't remember which book it was, but on the inside cover, Jack Kirby had signed, and again, it's not authenticated. It was a raw copy that I saw online. Maybe it was a Fantastic Four #1. Anyway, cool. A book I would love to have at some point, obviously an expensive book, but Jack Kirby's signature there, if you could get that authenticated, I think that would just be really, really awesome. Because there's always a thing when you're looking at vintage collectibles, whether it be trading cards or comic books or whatever it is, those little differentiators. I really like having, an autograph of an important person or having some sort of differentiator with that book, because a lot of these books, they were mass produced. And when you're looking at vintage, it's just a matter of what survived and in what condition, because it's not as if they printed 200 copies of Batman 1, or 200 copies of Superman 1 or whatever. They did make a lot of them, but they weren't being collected in the same way. They weren't being hoarded as what was happening in the 80s, 90s, and what we see today. So it's very, very different landscape and just very cool, these items. All right, guys. I will stop rambling. Let me know your thoughts here. JSA joining forces with CGC Comics. What effect will it have on your hobby experience? Let me know your thoughts. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.